Hello and welcome to Trading the Trend. The question we always ask ourselves every Thursday is what trends are you riding? Could be bullish, neutral, or bearish. I want to welcome you to this class as we kick off 2025. We also have Brent Moores in the chat. We welcome him. And the goal is not just to ride upward trends. Those might not always be there. Sometimes there might be more sideways or bearish trends. So in this class, we will not just look at bullish examples. We'll also look at different types of trends as well. Now, when we talk about trading the trend, we're typically talking about something at least 2 to 3 days minimum, okay? Probably 2 to 3 weeks, probably more realistic, to 2 to 3 months, okay? So probably if we kind of looked at many examples, we're thinking maybe 2 or 3 weeks, 2 or 3 months, try to get a trend that we could not just get in and out, but something that might kind of have more of a material gain up or down. So we'll talk about that here as we get in to the commentary. Now, also just remember that Brent and myself, we do post on X. You can follow us. It's just our first, last name, and CS. And just always remember it's capital, first name, capital, last name, CS. We don't reach out to anyone and solicit anything. If someone does, it's not us. Quick reminder there. And also remember when we talk about examples, we'll talk about stocks and options. Also remember that options carry a high level of risk, not suitable for all investors. Some options you might consider, others you might say, I'm not interested in that type of strategy. I might like others. That's for you to decide. That's okay. And all of us feel like that. Certainly, you can know all the strategies or many of them and say some of them you just like better than others. That's okay. That's why there's different strategies. The information here is provided for general informational purposes only. Also remember when we talk about examples, they are just that. Investing involves risk, including loss of principal. Also remember that short options can be assigned at any time up to the expiration, regardless of the in-the-money amount. We're talking about American options here. And also remember that option Greeks, remember they measure a sensitivity to something. And we'll talk about that more here today. And also when we talk about our agenda, I want to talk about how the markets are kind of setting up going into the end of last year and where they are now. We haven't seen kind of like where they are now for a while. It also is going to be kind of interesting because we're resetting up the portfolios, okay, which we did December 24th. And then what we did is we're going to start over here today, okay, really our first full day or second at the most. So we'll show those accounts here in just a moment. Now, also just real quick, let's take a moment and kind of talk about where the markets and the sectors are. We'll also talk about some bullish and bearish examples. Want to talk about some trades that are going into earnings. And then we also have some questions we want to get to as well. So first off, let me kind of just pull up just real quick a list, okay? So I'm just going to pull up the index list, okay? I like to kind of know what I'm going to be looking at and why. And if we, for example, so if we were looking at indexes, I'll pull up futures in just a moment. One of the things that we're seeing here is when we look at trend one, and many of you mentioned this in the chat already, okay? If we look at the indexes, first off, you see the VIX at 18. What does that tell you? VIX at 18. Well, if you see VIX at 18, that probably actually tells you that there's probably more stocks that are dropping down than going up, okay? Now, so you also notice that the year-to-date has been reset. Note that. And when you look at the SPX, trend one. NDX, trend one. So is the RUT. So is the SOX, if you want to include that. And the Dow Jones itself. So I think in some of our examples, it's maybe understandable to maybe think doing potentially bearish trends, okay? Now, the one thing I want to kind of take a quick look at the VIX, okay? When you pull this up, not necessarily the last 2 days or so, okay? You really saw the shorter term moving average. I'll send this chart out so you have this. Shorter term moving average kicked up, going green, okay? Continued. Now the moving averages kind of tightening, right? They're almost overlapping on each other. If we get actually across, well, maybe that volatility expands. Now, some people like to wait until the beginning of the year to maybe sell their positions. You might assume why. You're probably right. And some of that volatility can kick up typically in the first 2 weeks of the year. It's not unusual, okay? So when we look at the VIX, when we pull up these charts, SPX, okay, let me share that chart with you. Here was the horizontal support level that we had, past tense, because the price now is pushing down below that line, 58.72 again. Okay, so stop for just a moment, okay? If we said that we're responsible to trade bullish upward trends, we would have to come to the conclusion so far, we don't see a whole lot of bullish upward trends, okay? Not yet. Now, when you take a look at this, as we kind of zoom in on this, shorter term 10 and 20 period moving average, down, turned down, and red, okay? So the first goal is to protect the capital. If we don't actually see the trends that we like, the investor might say, I might want to be more in cash, the US dollar, if you're in US dollar, and you actually might say, look, I just don't see the setups that I want. Sometimes that is the right answer, and that's okay. Everyone say that's okay. That's okay, okay? And I think sometimes we try to force some things sometimes, and we don't really realize that, hey, don't have the trends that we're looking for yet, at least maybe for a stock trade. Other types of option trade, maybe, okay? Now, when we pull up just real quick the NASDAQ, I'll share that chart with you in just a sec. NASDAQ, also a short-term low relative to that, okay? Also moving averages down, red, okay? The Russell, okay? Russell not down as much, but man, it was just really the whole month of December, red moving averages big time, okay? And you look at the Dow Jones, you see that not a short-term low, but we do see a little rally intraday and a little fading, okay? Now, this is going to be the chart when we're looking at kind of initially the charts. Here is the link for this chart. So if you said, I don't know what do I do with the link? We're going to go up to the very top right, the setup, and we're going to go to open shared item, okay? So go to the very top right, setup, open shared item, and we're just going to copy and paste what I sent you in the chat. That is the script to this chart, okay? What I'm now going to do is just go preview and then import that. And what that really does is it pulls up a little mini chart in which you can save that, okay, right to your charts, okay? Let me kind of pull this. I want you to kind of see that I also have something behind as well. How do you save it? Well, go to Style and just Save Style and call it what you want, okay? Now, I want to kind of go back to a comment that someone made to me one time. I was teaching down at the, where was it? Down in Florida. We were in Fort Lauderdale. It was an NFL event for current and former players. And one of the subjects that I talked about is sometimes it's about not losing money, okay? Not losing money is the first offensive weapon, okay? If you lose money, now you got to make up for it. So if, for example, if we don't see some of the trends we like from a bullish perspective, the paper money account is going to stay more in cash until that trend changes. Now, let me kind of go back to something. When you see the market falling, what are you watching? Well, we're watching to see these horizontal support levels. We're watching when the price goes up, can it go up more than 3 days? Does the moving averages cross? Can it hold the support levels? If we, for example, fall down below this level, what are we doing? Well, we're going to watch and see the next level. So the big thing is, if these levels don't hold and we start making new lower low like we're seeing on the SPX, we can go back and really start to retest prior levels. Where are those levels? Let me maximize this. So if we look at this level and if we say we can't hold this level, the path of least resistance is that we fall down to the 57.05. So why don't buyers come in? Well, if buyers don't see a pitch like baseball that they like and they want to swing at, they just wait for prices to fall down lower, okay? Now, let's go just real quick to also sectors just briefly, and this will kind of set us up. Now, if you also go to sectors, and I'm going to pull up that. Now, the one thing that you'll kind of notice is, haven't seen this over a while, okay? When you look at the trend, the only sector, okay, that is even green, okay, or at least not a number one, is energy. It's the only one. Now, when we look at energy, you're also thinking about, well, what type of energy? It could be natural gas, it could be crude oil. What is it? Okay, the answer is both, okay? The only one that we actually see any green is crude oil. Now, a lot of times people say, well, maybe investing takes a lot of time. Well, right now it's not taking a whole lot of time because we can see dominant trends. Trend number one. Now, if you say I don't have that, we're going to right click on that, edit formula. And what you're going to notice is it gives us really a description of what does one mean. One simply just means the price is below, keyword, below, okay, the 10 and the 30 SMA. Negative momentum, negative trend. So right now, the only space, if we were going to say, James, I'm looking for bullish positions, the only place we could actually say where we could probably find them is really going to be in energy. Now, speaking of energy, let's kind of go look and kind of see now. Before I go to energy, I just want to kind of show you something, okay? Stocks are not the only asset class. Cash is an asset class, okay? Now, if you go, for example, go look at DXY, now, by the way, this is not your typical everyday move in the US dollar index. And what you noticed so far this morning is a pretty good pop. So first off, there was a trend going into this, and you actually saw a decent pop today on the US dollar. Now, remember that US dollar, our dollar is compared to other currencies. Euro, pound, franc, yen, you name it, okay? Canadian dollar, peso, the whole 9 yards. I want us to kind of keep an eye on, one, we kind of joked last year that maybe some of us might go to Europe on vacation, okay? And we're now getting to the point where the euro and the dollar are almost reaching parity. Keep an eye on that. That means that if we have $1 US, we could actually swap it for €1, okay? Not quite there yet, but really getting close, okay? Some of you might want to go, maybe, not a recommendation, of course. You're also seeing that if you looked at some of these other trends in kind of cash, we're also seeing a pretty big dropping in the British pound relative to the US dollar. If this chart is going down, it means that the British pound is falling and the US dollar is strengthening, okay? And the other place we're kind of seeing something, speaking of Switzerland, okay, and being neutral, you're seeing a big potential continuation pattern. If this chart is going up, it's showing that the US dollar is strengthening and the Swiss franc is declining, okay? Now, what you're going to notice is we're kind of coming back to this old high. So why do I bring this up? Well, because if stocks are going down, the money is moving somewhere. Where's the money moving to? Well, the money's moving to the equity money, potentially, if they sell out of stocks. It looks like the money's moving to cash. And that cash could actually be invested in, let's say, the US dollar itself, trying to get the US dollar to appreciate relative to a basket of other currencies. This is why last year when we taught futures, I said, hey, you might want to practice kind of looking at some of these currency examples. It's not the only way to trade that. You could also trade it with a product that Kevin and I talked about on Friday, ETFs as well. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. So just keep an eye on that. Now let's kind of go back to crude oil for just a sec, okay? When we looked at crude oil at the end of last year, okay, and I'm just bringing this up because we want to kind of see what is the price per barrel for light sweet crude. Now, you might be thinking as an investor, what does this have to do with stocks? You're about ready to find out. The stocks are backed by companies, and the companies sell a product called oil, or they use the input of this product, okay? Now, what you're going to notice is today, earlier on, we saw crude oil pop. Now, welcome to the world of correlation, right? That if crude oil goes up, might that actually mean that maybe our certain sectors correlated to what crude oil does? And as you can imagine, don't need probably a PhD in economics. You probably say, geez, I bet if we got crude oil or heating oil to go up, there might be a chance that the energy sector, which is energy companies, is related to what's happening with crude oil. So that's how we use futures to look at sectors, okay, and or indexes. And what you're going to notice is, let's kind of spend a little time on this for just a moment, okay? Now, if we're looking for bullish examples, and I know many of you, you might say, James, I'm learning about investing. I want to practice bullish examples first. I'm fine with that. Most of the time, the market goes up. Not all the time, okay? But a higher majority of the time, the market tends to go up. We might even say it's rigged sometimes to go up. Okay, don't get us to go down that rabbit hole. Now, what I want to do is I want to go just real quick to a scan, okay? If I went to a scan for just a moment and I said, hey, look, I'm just going to go to scan, go to Stock Hacker, and I'm just going to say scan in. We're going to go by industry, and I'm going to just bring up select all energy. Now, what this is going to do is if I did this, it's just going to say scan in the energy sector. Let me show that again. Scan tab, Stock Hacker, okay? Think of it as search, right? Scan in, and this is where you could go by industry. Now, you don't have to. You could say, look, I'm going to go look at the Dow Jones. Problem is how many energy stocks on the Dow Jones. So I would say by industry, energy, select all energy for just a moment. Now, the price that I have is $80. As an example, we always kind of just use two filter criteria. That's it, mainly. Mark, think of stock price. I'm just going to say $30 or higher, okay? And matter of fact, I'm even going to go 25, okay? Because there might be a stock that we might want to look at here, okay? The other thing is I'm just going to say 1 million in terms of the volume. Now, this is not average volume. This is volume. So this is like if you ran this in the first minute of the day, probably unlikely to get 1 million. So this kind of might be something more in the middle to the end of the day. Let's scan. Now, how many stocks come back? Well, the one thing you're going to notice is we get 26 stocks that actually come back. Now, a couple of these stocks that I want to bring up, okay? Now, by the way, could we run this? Okay, so what I got is I got 26 stocks. Let's click on the 3 lines. Let's go to save as a watch list, okay? Now, how long did that take? Okay, so what was kind of our mental thought process? Look at the futures, okay? Then we went down to the indexes. Then we went down to sectors. And we said, there's only one sector, okay? That's even giving us any love in terms of trend. We went to the scan and then Stock Hacker. And there was only 2 criteria. Mark price, think stock price, and volume. That's it, okay? So let's just get to the point, right? That's really what we want to do. Go to scan, and let's go save as a watch list. Now, when I say this is a watch list, I'm just going to call this energy stocks. I like to put a date so I kind of know when I ran it. Let's say 1-2, okay? Let's go save. Now, what do we want to get from that? Well, when I do this, I want to now go back to the market watch and quotes. That's going to be where we have the column headings right on our tab, okay? Or we can. And I'll talk more about that. Now, notice right now, what is on the list? Well, we're on the sectors. That's what we had. Click on the drop down, go to personal, and then what I want to do is that personal list. Well, one of the stocks in there is yours truly, energy stocks. Now, so now when we made the list, what it did is it's now kind of running the filters based on the search or scan that we ran. Now, one thing you'll notice is this looks a lot more green than what we saw in the Dow and the NASDAQ and the S&P and so on. Lots more green, okay? Now, if we just looked at the trend by itself, okay, lots of 2s. Now, remember, you said, I don't even know what trend is. Well, welcome to the 2025, okay? Right-click on that, edit formula, and now what you're going to notice if I said I need to cheat, a little cheat sheet here, scroll down, we're starting to get the stock to change from a downtrend to an uptrend. So one of the questions I get a lot is, how do I find stocks that were going down to maybe where they're starting to go to the upside? Let's just say number 2. Now, if the stock is a number 2, that will be closing above the 10-day moving average, okay? Now, it's lower than the 30, but the first sign that it's actually changing direction is it snaps, price does, it gets back above the 10-period moving average. So, now what are we going to do with this? Well, first off, we're going to kind of look and go see, are there any opportunities? And one of the stocks I would like to take a look at, if I actually said which one is, one of the ones that came up was, let me kind of rank this, BKR. Is that in the list? Yeah, it's right there, okay? Now, one of the stocks that was actually in there was BKR, and I'm going to kind of show a couple. Pull that up, BKR. Here it is right here. So this stock right here, what you're going to notice is it's a lower dollar stock, what, 40 bucks? And it kind of has like a downward sloping line of resistance, okay? And what you're now going to notice is there's your downward slope. And if we kind of looked at this, probably say something like maybe there's your downward channel. Now, it's not unusual that for example, that on day 2 of a breakout, that's the down day. It's not unusual. It's probably pretty normal. Now, what I want to do here is I want to set up a trade. Now, if I'm kind of wondering to myself, hey, I would like to get in, we're going to kind of do this in one of two ways. Now, remember, we said we're going to practice this, okay? We're going to kind of say, hey, look, if we could buy this stock, maybe right on the breakout line itself, or can we actually try to buy the stock if we go above today's high? How do you do that? Now, it's not going to buy both. It's going to buy one or the other. So how do we do that? We're going to right-click on the chart, okay? Then what we're going to do is just come down to where it says Buy Custom, and I'm going to go with OCO Bracket. Now, when I do Buy with OCO Bracket, this is a stock trade, okay? So stock buy plus 100, we'll come to that in just a moment. But let's kind of focus on the conditional order. So number one is I'm going to kind of write on the chart so we can all follow along. Now, I'm telling you right now, if most people practice this, you know, you might kind of be wondering, geez, I might want to practice this. There's a reason. We're going to say 4060, which is the diagonal line, at or below. Now remember, if you're buying the stock at 4060, you're thinking the price could go down to that level-ish and bounce back up, okay? Now, does every time it bounce back up? No, but at least you're buying it close to support. And if the investor does lose, the loss is probably going to be smaller because you're buying right at support. Second, if we got above today's high, what's today's high? 41.89. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little, so you can follow along in terms of the price, 41.89, yep. Now, what I'm going to do for time's sake is I'm just going to say, look, if we go to 42.09, that is just 20 cents above today's high. Now, I've never back tested that. Is 20 cents better? I just a filter, okay? You can do a quarter, okay? It's obviously 20 cents on a $40 stock. It's not the same thing on a $3,300 stock like AutoZone, okay? But I'm just going to put a little filter. If we get at or above today's high, 42.09, 20 cents above today's high, try to get in at one of those levels. Now, how do we put it in? I'm going to change limit to a market, day to a GTC, okay? We're going to click on the gear. So when I go market GTC, click on that gear. Now what you're going to see is if I slide that over, I'm going to click on symbol, BKR, method, mark, think stock price. We're going to say so notice that the sideways V, okay, or greater or equal to, is pointing towards the stock price. It's pointing towards the stock price, which means the stock price is greater or equal to what's the price? Well, I wrote it down over there so we can follow along. 42.09. Well, let's put it right there, okay? Now, why not buy now? Well, the investor might say, James, I think the price might fall down a little bit lower, and I'm going to try to buy at one of these areas, but not both, okay? Now, if I take a look at this, you're now going to see that we want to make sure that when I type in those numbers, that they match below. Do not assume, verify, okay? And what you're now going to see is if we fall down to 40.60 or lower, we're going to try to buy those shares. Second, if we don't go down to that number and then we push back to the upside, the stock is going to try to buy at this price or higher. Now, there's not a cap to that, okay? This is buy it if we get at or above that price. Now, let's kind of go back to something safe. What about the target, okay? Remember, we kind of said our thought process was if we're going to try to trade the trend, we're going to think at least maybe 2 to 3 weeks, okay? Maybe 2 to 3 months, maybe longer, but that's probably a sweet spot. So if we said, look, we're kind of thinking that it might try to go back to the upside, some investors might say, James, I'm just going to try to target that prior high. Now, I'm not saying that's the only target, but some like to do something that has a higher probability of going to the target. Problem with that is you don't really get the extension. You might get it, but it's just a lower dollar amount and or percent. I'll play that right now, but just know that we could also bring up an extension target. If we talked about if this trade were to break down, if we fell down below this low, I'm going to put, let's say, a stop at right at $39, example given. Could even do a little lower. If we go below $39, that probably means that this trend, that little breakout that we actually had, it's breaking down. Now, the hardest thing for people to do is to admit that they're wrong. We don't mind to admit that we're wrong. We just want to have an exit. The exit is saying if the purchase is made, that's the key words. The buy has to fill first before the stop is valid. Okay, first triggers SEQ, first triggers OCO. These targets and stops do not matter unless the order is filled to get in first at this price or lower, or that price or higher. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is going to go confirm and send. And now what you're going to see is we get a dialog box, and you're going to see that in this case we'll send the order. Now notice this, we see some red lines. You do not brush through that. You want to read what it's saying and verify what it's showing. Okay. Now, I want to also go back and say, if you said, look, there's a certain amount of capital that I want to do. Well, this is just doing shares. I call them pool balls. Click on the pool balls. It's going to show percent of the portfolio. And if I click on the percent, it's now going to show a dollar amount. So if you said, James, my position size capital-wise is, let's say, 4,300. What you're now going to notice is you can type in that capital size if you wanted. And if you wanted to kind of say, well, how many shares would that be? Right above the dollar amount, there's like a red icon. Click on it. And it's going to drop down and tell us approximately 105 shares. We don't know exactly how many shares it's going to be, because we don't know if we're buying at the low or the high. But it's probably going to be right around, if it fills, 100-ish shares. Whatever it can, if it goes down to this price or less, it's going to try to buy $4,300 worth of stock. If it goes to that price or higher, it's going to buy $4,300 of stock. Now, if it goes to that price or higher, you know you're going to be buying less shares because, well, the share price is higher. Okay. Now, I want to also go back to just real quick. Some of you might also be wondering. Okay, so Market Watch. So how many of you kind of like kind of the ability to kind of screen the stocks like that? Okay. Now, some of you asked a question about seeing like different lists. Let me kind of show you something real quick and how vastly different it is right now. If we go to, let's say, energy stocks, I'm just going to go to a public list, and let me kind of show you some variation. Dow Jones Industrial Average. And if we look at the Dow Jones, the 30 stocks, what you're going to notice is there's only 3 stocks in here. One, Verizon, Triple M, and JPM, and actually CBX now, Chevron. So you have 4 stocks out of 30 that are showing you any bullish trend at all. And the other thing you'll notice is when you look at the moving average, this counts the number of days where the moving average has been red or green, lots of red there, okay? Now, this Dow Jones list, this is a public list. Just click on it, drop down, go to public, Dow Jones Industrial Average, okay? Now, the question came up. I got an email this morning, and you know who I'm referring to, okay? Let me kind of go back to that. It was actually David, okay? And if we take a look at this, what I want to do is I want to go to, let's say, a different list. Well, let's kind of see if the NASDAQ is strong. Well, if we go to, let's say, the public, and we go to the NASDAQ 100, watch what happens to my screen. I get a lot of custom. So it's kind of like it's not able to compute 100 stocks with the filters that I have. What do we do? Well, what you're going to notice is I can break that list down in half. And we've done this before. Just want to answer the question, okay? So I'm going to go down to this list, go to personal, and I just took the NASDAQ 100 and chopped them in half, okay? And now what you're going to notice is when I go to the NASDAQ 100 list number 1, instead of seeing a whole bunch of things that can't load, it's all of a sudden loading, okay? And if I scroll down, there's about 50 or so stocks. The limit that I have seen, not always, but most of the time, is if you get a list of 50 stocks or more, it's probably going to struggle to compute it. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want to share this with you just really quick to make sure we're all on the same page. Okay. So what I'm going to do is that's NASDAQ 1 list. And you can go to setup, top right, open shared item. Now, what is it sharing? Well, it's sharing the list. Okay. So this is a way we can filter the markets. Okay. The NASDAQ specifically, go to open shared item and just copy and paste that in. Now, we're sharing a list. So if I share a list and I go preview, it's going to import the item as NASDAQ 100 number 1. Okay. It's taking what I called it and putting it right there. Fine. Now, if I did that, where does it go? Hit the drop down, personal, and it's going to be right there, NASDAQ 1. Okay. Now, what about the 2? If I went down to the second one, what you're going to see if I did that, brought that list up, let me kind of share that list as well. Now, by the way, someone asked the question, how did you break them in half? I kind of manually just made a watch list and then named it, okay, NASDAQ 1 and NASDAQ 2. Probably took about 10, 15-minute stops. So that list, that script that I sent out is the list of the NASDAQ 100, list number 2. Now, so the first 2 I gave you was for the NASDAQ. Reminder, how do you bring it over? Go to setup, open shared item, copy and paste. Okay, setup, open shared item, right there, preview. And if I preview that, notice it automatically comes up with a name that I had from this platform. All right, so that's not bad. Now, the last 2 I'm just going to send. If you said, I'd like to get that same thing, but of the S&P 100, okay? Now what you're going to notice is, and I'll come back to that, Lena, in just a sec. And then if you look at that, so that's the S&P 100. And the last one I'm going to send to you is going to be for the S&P, the second list. So the last 2 links I sent, that was for the S&P 100 and there and there. Okay, so you'll have 4 scripts that I sent. Okay, now these are just a list that's broken down. Okay, and that way it should load better. Why are these not loading? Sometimes that can happen, but you got to remember I'm streaming live, and so it's taking some of the bandwidth. Okay, on my platform right now. Now let's kind of go back to something. Let's go back to just real quick to the question, which is on that example trade. Okay, when we go look at BKR and it's like a $40 or so stock, let's kind of go look at the paper money account sizes, right? So if I go look at this paper money account, the BKR, got about 30,000 there. If I go look at, let's say, the IRA, what are we talking about? It's about 105-ish. So BKR would probably be a better example, maybe with a lower dollar price. But I'll be honest, have no problem with doing it in both, okay, since it's like a $45 stock. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of just quickly push that one more time, BKR, okay? Now, if you don't mind, I'm just going to kind of put that back in, and I'm going to kind of show us how we could do that in both just quickly. So when I looked at that price, what was that price we had? 40. Now I'm going to do this fast because we already did it. 4209. 4209. Okay. 4209. That was at or above. And then that last, the at or below, 4060. Okay. So when we look at the target, we had 45 and 39. Okay. So how do you kind of do this maybe with a little speed? Okay, which isn't bad. Okay. Now, first off, I'm going to go back to that gear. Okay. Don't need to explain again, already did. Okay. And I'm going to put in that price, 4209. Okay. This is in the paper money account, and you're going to see that BKR mark less or equal to got a price 4060. Okay. So 4060. Make sure that those numbers show. Yep. Correct. Okay. Put the target 45. Okay. Just getting us caught up to where we were. And we're going to put it in both limit dated GTC, stop. And you're going to see the stop. We did our example at 39. Now, so if we're in, for example, the IRA and the margin, we'll do it in both. Now, first off, when we kind of look at the capital size, right? No more than 5 to 8% of the capital. If we took 5 or 8% of the capital, we're probably talking about $6,000, okay? If I click on the pool balls, click on percent, go to dollar amount, you're now going to see that there's the number, there's the dollar sign. We're going to put in 6,000, okay? If I put in 6,000, okay, it's about 146 shares of stock, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is if I just go confirm and send, what you're now going to notice is we can also say account, okay? If I go to where it says account, I could just drop this back and say, look, I don't want us to do it just in one. I want it to do it in both, okay? And that drop down should be there. For some reason, it's not. Well, okay. Let me go back, edit all, okay? Yeah, it should show that. But for the moment, I'll just do it on the IRA. If I had that drop down, which I should, we would put it in both accounts. I will make sure it is in both. Going to go to confirm and send. Let's just see if it's hiding from me. It's not, okay? But we'll put it in the IRA for right now. We'll put it in both. Lena, who has that question. Also remember that read what's in red to verify. Remember the stop is it's not guaranteed to sell right at that price. It could sell at a lower price level. Send that order, okay? Now, yeah, I'll fix that. Kind of did something a little weird there, but I will fix that. We know the prices, 42.09, 40.60 if it got above or below that price. Now, the one thing I want to go back to, other stocks that kind of look maybe a little bullish in that area, just a quick heads up. Number one is you saw that listing, Halliburton. Well, why would Halliburton be a potential interest? Halliburton is kind of one of those stocks where you actually saw a breakdown, okay? And then what type of pattern do you really notice on the chart? Well, what you're noticing on the chart is like a V pattern, right? This is supposed to be resistance. So far, it's not doing a very good job. And so what you're going to notice is if that is, not a resistance anymore, it might try to snap back up. And this goes back to kind of the most under talked about patterns out there, okay? If you see people buying below support, they think they have enough capital to probably knock this thing higher. Now, we're going to show the example on Halliburton. Now, if it were to go higher, if it were, okay, where might it try to go to? What would you say? Well, it might try to go to maybe if we kind of said, where do we see resistance? Maybe let's say $30 or so. So now what you're going to see in this price is we kind of see the stock kind of feeling out that old support level, potential resistance level. What I'm going to do here is we're going to go back to the Halliburton, right in the paper money account. We're going to go right back to the trade tab, type in HAL, okay? Now, if we decided, you know what, James, I want to do something. I want to do something that's kind of give it a little bit of time, okay? If we're talking about buying options, we're not going to buy options with less than 30 days on the monthly options. So in this case, we're going to go the 21 February, okay? Try to get some time for this trade to work out. Now what we're going to see is we're going to buy a call. Now buy a call just gives you the right to buy the shares at that strike price from now until expiration. Unlimited upside with a maximum loss of what the investor paid for the call, okay? Now, some, they like to kind of come over and maybe finance that debit with maybe selling a put too. Now, if you buy a call and you sell a put on the exact same strike, the delta is 100. It's going to mimic the profit and loss diagram of a stock. Here we don't have the dividend. We also have an expiration. So there's some differences. What I'm going to go ahead and do is right click on this. We're going to go to where it says buy, and then we're going to go to where it says collar synthetic. Okay. Now, if I looked at this and what account are we in? Well, we are in the IRA. Now, what I'm going to do is we got the 27 call and the put. How much is it? Well, $76. Now, if we go to confirm and send, how much money is it setting aside to do the position? Well, it's $2,700 because if the stock went down to zero. Now, what I want us to notice is here, Yeah. And notice how that's showing up. It's kind of funny. It's back now. I don't know what changed. But now what I want to do is I want to bring something back up that we said we would do before. In this trade, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to sell the 27. We're going to do a short wide put spread. Why? Because we want to know if this stock actually goes down, it can only go down so far where the investor has a right to sell the shares. So notice we don't want the risk to be all the way to zero. So we're buying an out of the money put. The delta on that put, well, it's less than 10. It's what we talked about last year. So consistent. Now, that is a short wide put spread. We want to add that call back on top. And to do that, we're just going to go first triggers SEQ, and we're going to click on that 27. Now, what you're going to notice is this is really just two bullish single options. The short put is a single option. The 27 is a single option. We're just combining those two. This 23 right there is just downside protection. If that ever becomes worth something, it tells us that the trend was down. Okay, so if that becomes worth something, most likely, or we have lost money. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is going to try to let this position fill. But notice now, when I bring this up in the IRA, it shows the buying power effect only 490. Why? Well, because the risk isn't down to zero. Why? Because you bought the 23. Okay? So remember I said one of the points here today was, how does someone try to make money in the market? First step is try not losing it. Okay? And we're trying to mitigate or manage risk. Now, you might ask the question, geez, is it worth maybe 14 cents or 15 cents, or that'd be $15, to just take that risk off the table for a certain length of time? And some investors might say, yeah, James, I think that might make sense. Okay. So what I'm going to do is note that extra commission because we're buying the put to send the order. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for this order to try to fill. If it fills, what we're going to do is we're going to go back, and I'm just going to wrap it up like this. We're going to go ahead and set the stop or the conditional exit. And we're going to say, look, if we go at or below that price by 3%, and that'll be the exit if we go down. And the upside target is going to be about 30, I'm going to say about 30.85. Okay? Why not 31 perfectly? Look, it's in the vicinity. We're not talking about much of a difference. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of take this maybe even below 27 since we're so close. Wrapping up here. You're going to notice that I'm going to bring up 27. Okay? And I'm going to put that number 27 times, there it is, 2619. Okay, so those are going to be our numbers to the downside if it goes down, and to the upside the target. And we could just go back and just quickly put that on. Okay, so all I'm going to do in this case on Halliburton is I'm going to just click on that and that. I'm only clicking on the options that are bullish, okay? And what you're now going to notice is I'm going to click on those, right click, create closing order, and then sell. And when I do that, it's going to create the exits. And for time's sake, I'll just give this to here, market GTC, just like we've been doing today. You just go with the gear and just type in the numbers that we saw on that screen. Remind me of those numbers again. They look like as follows, okay? If we go to at or above, like we did before, 30.85, sell the call, buy that short put back. If it doesn't go to the upside and it goes down to this price or lower, sell the call and buy the short put back. The breakout is failing. So our two trades here today were really on BKR and Halliburton. Halliburton kind of more of a V pattern. Also a channel trade that we're trying to see if we can't get a little reversal on. Continue to watch crude oil. Continue to watch kind of US dollar. Understand that cash is also an asset class. And if stocks are going down, some investors might move that stocks to maybe more cash-based type of trades. Okay. And as you can see that there's a couple ways you could do that. Okay. Now I'm out of my time here today. Want to give us a quick reminder that with what we discussed here today, You can also go to our playlist, okay, and subscribe. Okay, there's our playlist for the class where you can go back and review any of our past classes. You could also say, well, how do I follow you guys on YouTube? That's actually the page to YouTube right in the middle. If you have not subscribed already, you can just click on subscribe, okay? Free, okay? And also, if you said, well, where do I see a list of the classes, okay? And how do I stay in touch and kind of who's teaching what and when? You're going to see right on this page, upcoming webcasts, and also right at the top, on-demand and in-person events. Make sure you bookmark these. That way you could actually follow us throughout 2025. I want to thank Brent Morris for answering those questions in chat. And also with that, I want to give us a quick reminder that with what we talked about, all investing has risk. And that's why we want to kind of practice the exits and the position sizing appropriately. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for our next webcast coming up right at the top of the hour. And remember, this has been the class on Trading the Trend. I'll be back on trading ETFs and also wrapping up tomorrow afternoon as well. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for our next class coming up next. Take care. Bye-bye.